Now, for the last day or so, I've had people asking me for my opinion on Mark Hamill's most recent comments in regards to Star Wars, the sequel trilogy, and so on, and so here I am to briefly do just that. And I know some of you will say, oh boy, another video where Thor complains about Luke in The Last Jedi. But instead of doing that or anything like it, I'll quickly give you my thoughts on what he said before taking a step back and asking, what if anything does it or should it mean if Mark Hamill doesn't like the sequel trilogy? And no, I'm not going to read all those comments that have surfaced in the last couple days here and now. Instead, I'm assuming most of you have seen them and read them yourself or heard them discussed in another video. So I'll just put up some images of them, and if you want, or haven't seen them yet, you can pause this video and read them for yourselves. And with that said, let's start with this question. Does Mark Hamill like the direction the sequel trilogy went in, especially in regards to his character? And the answer to that is no. I think it's pretty clear he doesn't. All the times he said something to the effect of, I fundamentally disagree with everything Rian Johnson did with my character in episode 8, seems like strong evidence to support that. Not to mention all the jokes he's made about having to get into shape for episode 7, just to have a 30-second scene at the bitter end of the movie where he stands there and says nothing. All in all here, and he's said this before in interviews, but this wasn't exactly what he was expecting when he signed up to do the trilogy. In fact, and he may have said this jokingly, who knows, but he said in one of those recent quotes here that they hornswoggled me, or that they tricked me into doing it. And again, unless there's a video of the interview perhaps, it's hard to know if he said that in a humorous way or to be almost like a joke, or if he was being dead serious and showed some signs of true anger and frustration. Though having seen plenty of Mark Hamill interviews before, I'd guess it was the former and he said it as something like a joke. Though of course that doesn't mean it's not exactly how he feels. Because he almost certainly does feel hurt and betrayed on some level over all of this with his character, and that'd be a natural reaction in my opinion. I mean, put yourself in his shoes for a moment. The character you're most famous for, who is beloved by millions and millions of fans, suddenly has a huge character change off screen and is nothing like he once was, and what many were hoping he'd still be like. Not to mention, he's also nothing like you yourself, or in this case Mark Hamill, imagined he'd become, and Hamill even said that he had to think of him as Jake Skywalker when he was playing him, because he didn't feel like he was even playing the same character anymore. Then factor in that the handling of Luke in this trilogy has become the center of, shall we say, a conflict within the fanbase, and I'm sure that's pretty devastating for Mark Hamill. Luke went from this almost universally loved and enjoyed character within the fanbase to one causing a massive controversy and splitting that fanbase. That then brings us to the question, does Mark Hamill truly hate the sequel trilogy? Well, maybe. There certainly seems to be a lot of evidence that he doesn't like it very much at the very least, but who knows if he truly hates it and curses its very existence behind closed doors. And at this point, even if Hamill came out tomorrow and said he loved these new movies, some just wouldn't believe him and would claim Disney made him say it. And on the flip side, if he came out and said he did indeed just hate these movies, others would look for excuses to explain it the other way. Which leads us to a rather tricky question. Does it really matter what Mark Hamill thinks about the sequel trilogy? And honestly, in many ways, no, it doesn't. What should really matter here is how you yourself feel about it. And before some of you think I've fallen to the dark side here because I'm not overly eager to use Mark Hamill's opinions as evidence against the quality of The Last Jedi, let me explain. Because yeah, Luke Skywalker always has been and always will be my favorite character. And a strong argument could be made that doing what they did to his character in The Last Jedi was an objective mistake. Because, as I've said before, he was a golden ticket that could have been used time and time again to, no pun intended, milk money out of the fans who love him by featuring him in more books, comics, and maybe even in more movies. But now many of those fans who would have eaten up and, more importantly, spent money on anything and everything Luke Skywalker, well, they want nothing to do with the character anymore, even if an attempt is made to, quote-unquote, fix him. In other words, by doing what they did, they turned away a great many fans from the franchise, which then means money lost in the long run, which of course goes against the main reason Disney bought Lucasfilm in the first place, which is to make money from Star Wars. Hence, a drastic and unexpected change to Luke's character, especially off-screen, could be looked at as an objective business mistake because it lost you customers and money. Anyway, getting back on track here, even if all along Mark Hamill had been saying he was fully on board with the way his character was handled, and he couldn't be happier with Luke's final chapter, and there wasn't one single peep out of him about being upset, it wouldn't have changed my personal opinion of Episode 8 and Luke in that movie. No more than I'd guess someone who does love The Last Jedi now isn't all too fazed by Hamill's rather disparaging remarks towards it at times, and instead more or less disregard them and continue to just enjoy the movie. Now sure, I might be a little surprised that Hamill felt that way because, to be fair, the character he once was has radically changed, and absolutely no disrespect intended towards him, but Mark Hamill's opinion doesn't or wouldn't change mine. Nor would I necessarily use it to try and prove my own beliefs about the movie as the right ones if they happen to align. Though yes, I will certainly say that when an actor says he fundamentally disagrees with the direction of his character, that should raise some red flags and be an indicator that maybe the character is being misused. I'm also not saying that I don't agree with him, because I mostly do, or that we can't have a good debate that this new version of the character Luke Skywalker is inconsistent with how we previously knew him, or that the opinion of the guy who plays the character has no value in the discussion. I'm only saying here that I'm not going to point at Mark Hamill's comments and claim we now have absolute definitive proof that The Last Jedi was a bad movie. I'd much rather dissect the movie itself and have a discussion about it and make the case that way. Because again, and I'm trying to keep it absolutely real and honest here, in an alternate reality where Hamill is praising The Last Jedi and thinks his character arc is amazing, well, people like me who don't like The Last Jedi would likely be making the argument that his thoughts on the character aren't really all that important. But since they align with mine, I'm going to be prone to use it as evidence against The Last Jedi being a good movie, when in reality, I again should, and I do try to, look at the movie itself, analyze it, and present my case against it that way. And I know this here might not be the answer you were expecting or even wanting to hear out of me, but despite what some of you out there believe, I'm not just here to rail on The Last Jedi any and every chance I get. And I know this is also hard for some of you out there to believe, and oddly enough, I just was having this discussion on my Discord server with people who like The Last Jedi. And yeah, people who like The Last Jedi support me on Patreon and join my discussions on Discord. Anyway, what you see as complaining or bitching and moaning about a movie that now came out well over a year ago and should have stopped well over a year ago, well, others see as a way of discussing something that's still bothering them to some degree. And I'm not saying they always do it civilly, but a lot of people were extremely let down and even angered by The Last Jedi. And, right or wrong, and again, it's not exactly proof of anything, but it brings them some level of comfort to hear Luke Skywalker himself, or Mark Hamill, echo some of their sentiments. Well, that's all I've got for you this time. Now it's your turn to tell me what you think about Mark Hamill's comments and how important they either are or are not. Either way, let me know in the comments below, and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.